Empress Dawaga Cixi now assumed China's most important Empress regent title, continues her reign behind the soft, delicate golden curtains. Nevertheless, within the Qin dynasty's rules, as soon as the boy emperor Saichuan turned 16, he is now considered an independent ruler of the dynasty. Now Cixi must respect and recognize the rules and carry out alternative plans to remain in position as a strong power holder for the evolving empire. Please excuse the mispronunciation of the names throughout this video. I can only give you my very best. Now let's continue with part 2. Empress Saichuan, who was given the name Tongqi during his succession, which means order and prosperity from the Confucius teachings, was now independent of the two empresses, Cixi and Xian. However, the young emperor did not show much interest in the modernization project plans laid out by the imperial councils and the two empresses Dawagas. Instead, Tongqi was more interested in having fun, occasionally traveling to the west, enjoying the company of many women for hire. Tongqi also acquired a drinking habit, which later caused incompetence in his judgment needed as a ruling emperor. Let's put it this way, he got distracted along the way. The emperor's negligence of his duties, running a strong, efficient state, eventually caught the dynasty serious repercussions, both domestic and foreign. Eventually, the emperor's abuse of partying, alcohol, and loose women took a toll on his health. In the year 1875, Emperor Tongqi reportedly passed away from smallpox at the age of only 18. That same year, after Tongqi's passing, both empresses, Dawaga Cixi and Xian, resumed the position of regency. Cixi arranged a council's meeting to discuss the important task of finding the next emperor. Generally speaking, Cixi's opinion on who sits on the throne is respected and honored, or else. She chose her sister's 3-year-old son, named at birth Zaishan, who later became Emperor Guachi. In the year 1880, Empress Dawaga Xian was weak and frail. She unexpectedly passed a year later from illness. Without delay, Cixi, now the main Empress regent, sits behind the sheer golden silk curtains, listening to conversations of the grand imperial court. Later, behind closed doors, she issued out specific orders. During this time, while the young empress sat on the throne, Cixi made headways by implementing and executing few modernization plans involving China's railways. The railways was a major project in Beijing because it aided China in bringing new wealth into its economy. Meanwhile, Empress Cixi again was worried with growing concerns about her own control and power in the future. Emperor Guachi was soon to be considered a man by the time he reached 16 years old. In the year 1887, Emperor Guachi turned 16 and was positioning himself to rule independently, apart from the Empress Dawaga's influences. 2 years later, at just 18, the emperor married Cixi's niece, Long Yu. Later that year, Empress Dawaga officially retired from the regency. Despite her retirement, Cixi continued to influence Emperor Guachi's daily decisions. She was allowed to supervise the young emperor while seated on the throne. So let me explain. Since childhood, Emperor Guachi respected Cixi like a trusted, wise elder or mother. Let's continue. It was well known that Emperor was sheltered and rarely stepped out of the Forbidden City. However, in the near future, Emperor Guachi's rule and power will be challenged and tested by known powers and familiar allies. In the year 1894, war broke out between China and Japan, called the First Sino-Japanese War. The battle was over the fight for independence of Korea from China. However, China was no match to Japan's modernized army, navy, and technology. China's military was defeated in over a year. China was now forced to recognize the independence of Korea. As a result, Chinese officials were ordered to open 5 additional ports to Japan and other Western powers to establish and operate factories on Chinese soils. Meanwhile, the failure to win the battle with Japan encouraged other plans for Empress Dowager Cixi, the one and only Empress Dowager who covertly seized power from behind the silk curtains for decades. She eventually made a power play against her nephew, Emperor Guachi, for his failure to lead China into victory over Japan. Consequently, Emperor Guachi's authority was usurped by Japanese and Western powers, thereby giving Cixi the unofficial title to head China's future plans with foreign heads of state. In fact, the Grand Council, under Cixi's supervision, ordered the emperor to be placed under house arrest. Hi there. I'm ordering tea and macaroons. Yes, 3. Thank you. Welcome to the Thought Cafe. Let's get right into this discussion. Now it appears the current Emperor Guachi is treated very poorly. However, Cixi must put her nation's interests first and do whatever means necessary. Man or woman ruler, you must have the heart of a lion if you want to make an imprint for your nation's future. Here is a quote from the book I got most of my research from. The title is Emperor Dowager Cixi, The Concubine Who Launched Modern China by Arthur June Chung. Quote, the Opium War forced China to accept Western missionaries. By then, they'd been banned for more than 100 years. After the war, the French, who had little trade with China and were only interested in propagating Catholicism, rode on a European victory and lobbied hard for lifting of the ban. End quote. Let's see what happens next. During the late Qin dynasty, the spread of anti-foreign, anti-imperialist, anti-Christian sentiments throughout China was a major concern for the West. Between 1899 through 1901, a group of northern Chinese men with martial arts skills rose up against the Western influences. The English dubbed them the name Boxer because of their fighting skills. Unfortunately, this group was no match against the Western foreign invaders, which was made up of a multinational military coalition known as the Eight-Nation Allegiance of Foreign Powers. Within seconds, the Boxers were mulled over by the Eight Nations military powers. Hence the phrase, Boxers' insurrection, or the British phrase, century of humiliation. Emperor Guachi, now under strict supervision below Empress Dowager, was allowed to sit on a stool next to the Empress, who by now was sitting on the main throne, giving out orders to the Grand Council. Cixi, now feeling bitter regarding the outcome of the war and later the failure of the Boxer insurrection, brought back memories of legends and stories told to her as a young girl about China's medieval past by her elders. The art of war. She reminded the council of those times, stating, quote, "China came out of medieval China," end quote. Meaning we, Chinese, were fearsome fighters in the past. This statement also meant Empress Dawaga is capable of ordering punishment with immense ruthlessness. Cixi heard rumors regarding an assassination attempt on her life, and word got back to her that the assailant was one of Empress Guaqi's concubines. The Empress immediately had her deleted. In the year 1902, Cixi made peace with the Western powers. Cixi realized there was more to gain from negotiating and aligning China's policies with the West. Conversely, the West also came to the realization that currently Empress Dawaga is the only person who could hold China together. With this said, both empires came to the conclusion they both share a symbiotic relationship. In this case, China can gain from using Western templates for their reform programs, and the West can gain access to resources via trade ports. Furthermore, Cixi's enjoyment of Western entertainment called the opera later revolutionized China's interest in creating their own National Opera of China in Beijing. In the year 1905, the Empress made history, having the opera performers filmed, creating China's first motion picture. Empress Dawaga returned to the business of modernization and reforming China. During this period in China, there was a cultural tradition known as foot binding. Interestingly enough, Cixi, being a Manchurian woman, never partook in the ritual of foot binding like the rest of Chinese women throughout the nation. Instead, the Manchurian women adopted their own version of shoe fashion called the flower bowl, boat, or moon shoes. These shoes would create a similar swaying style of walking, which gave the wearer an illusion of an attractive stride while walking. However, for the rest of China, women were still practicing the art of foot binding, which later caused extreme deformities to their feet. In fact, Cixi passionately hated this tradition and made it her mission to be the first to abolish this cultural faux pas. One of Cixi's first edicts after the war was to ban the practice of foot binding. Empress Dawaga Cixi, now an older woman, continued to make her everlasting mark on China's legacy. She also continues to sign new reform bills and policies. She bans the punitive law, deletion by 1,000 cuts. Historically, this punishment was ordered for a citizen who was guilty of treason. Equally important was the ushering of China's new educational system based on Western models. Now, on the side, I think it's very important to note this about China's education. The education was a combination of Western and ancient Chinese culture. Now let's get back. Cixi later signed a bill allowing free press in China. She also launched a new project to turn China into a constitutional monarchy with an elected parliament. Ultimately, Cixi's vision and goal for change is the survival of the Qin dynasty. Empress Dawaga's last grand plan was the Reform Edict mentioned previously, which is the introduction of a new constitutional or parliamentary monarchy. Unfortunately, this plan did not come into fruition during her lifetime. She passed away in the year 1908 at the age of 73. It is important to note that another key event in this story is Emperor Guaqi becoming a recluse during his final days at the age of 37. He too unexpectedly passed away from a serious illness just a day before Empress Dawaga Sershi's transition. However, on a bright note, right before Sershi's passing, she was successful in overseeing and appointing the new child emperor, Puwa, age 2, who ended up being the last and final emperor of China. Empress Dawaga Sershi is written in history as powerful, determined, and bold to have accomplished great heights for her nation's future. Thank you for being patient and tuning into part 2 of Empress Dawaga Sershi's story. There was a lot I learned covering this particular story. Wow. Empress Sershi's life was very complex. However, no different than any of the stories I've already covered. The journey in life is sometimes unpredictable, but worth the challenge. What are your thoughts about today's video? And side note, please comment, share, like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so when I upload another video, you will be notified. And as always, because everyone has a story. Ciao.